never come so easily, but they never go as planned. But don't you understand, baby? Dry your tears where you ran. We did a foolish thing. Now all that I can do is say, but it never comes so easily. It never goes as planned. But that's just where it stands, baby. And if I was a hero, would that you think that I am? Well, I would be there for you when you're rebel.
Hi, it's me again, and welcome back to my new little art channel. So yeah, here we go with another stuffy nose narration. I'm really sorry about that, but for this video I thought it'd be fun to try and film my entire painting process this time, from start to finish. It's going to be another gouache and watercolor painting, and I'm making this one for an upcoming group show next month for Copro Gallery. And again, I'm a bit new at this whole filming process, but this video will be playing out in more of a painting time-lapse style while I ramble about my usual nonsense in the backdrop. And as a quick intro to myself, my name is Kit, and I've been what I guess you can call a full-time backpacking artist over these last several years, and I'm currently painting and talking to you from here in Cusco, Peru at the moment. Oh, and also if I sound like I'm out of breath while I'm talking, it's probably because I am, as I'm not that great when it comes to being up in these higher altitudes like we've been here in the Andes as of lately, no matter how many weeks I've had to supposedly acclimate to this elevation. The city of Cusco is about 3,400 meters above sea level, and I still run out of breath just walking to the kitchen, even though we've already been here close to 2 months by now, but I'm also a big wimp. Alright, so anyway, back to the painting. The theme of this group show I'm making this painting for is fables and folklore, and so I figured this could be my chance to go on and make my own version of this old Ukrainian witch cat illustration I've always loved. I'll attach a link to the original illustration below, but it's an image that accompanied a collection of other Ukrainian illustrations that were published sometime in the early 1900s. Alongside the supposed findings and written recordings of old Ukrainian rumors and stories of witchcraft and demonology that apparently took place in some tiny villages mostly found in the Carpathian region of Ukraine. And this is where I give a little shout out to my sweet partner who was kind enough to translate the text for me. He apparently had a pretty hard time at it because the texts were written in a very old dialect of Ukrainian, so I think he deserves a lot of praise for that. Thank you, Dima. And really quickly, I'm sorry, but I just realized I don't think I've ever made it clear here or really anywhere on social media before, but just so you know, I'm from the USA. And I'm just now realizing that context is pretty important here now that I'm talking about translating, but yes, I am American. And I was referring to my Ukrainian partner, who is part of the reason why I do make a lot of Ukrainian-inspired paintings, so that's a context. So the particular tale that the witch cat illustration accompanied spoke of special abilities the witches of this region possessed, specifically the ability to shapeshift into animals, including cats. But part of the passage also made a brief reference to Kupala's night and the fern flower, which I was especially intrigued by as this was something my partner Dima had once mentioned in the past. And so Kupala's night is actually what I titled this painting after. So tying witch cats to Kupala's night. This is a pretty old Slavic celebration, and it's supposed to take place on the summer solstice in some regions of Eastern Europe. And it seems to be the most popular in Ukraine and Belarus, and a bit of Poland still. I think most Kupala rituals vary by region, but the general premise is for young people of the villages to gather around on this evening with the hopes of becoming betrothed to someone by the next morning. And in my opinion, the most interesting ritual of this entire evening is when everyone goes out to seek out this mystical red fern flower, which is said to only bloom once a year on this particular evening. We were actually watching this really funny Polish mockumentary type show called 1670 a few months back. It was on Netflix in our region, and I don't know, maybe it's still there. But we were cracking up because in one of the scenes they went hunting in the forest, and all of a sudden they just very casually show this close-up shot of a glorious, majestic fern flower, which of course doesn't actually exist in real life, but you instantly know what it is since, you know, it's a show strictly full of Polish jokes and humor. But it was so cool to see this thing actually brought to life and portrayed on screen, but then suddenly out of nowhere someone just kicks it off screen and it's gone, never to be seen again. And it's so silly because this mystical flower is just so relevant in Eastern European storytelling, folklore, and songs, and they reference it here in this show in such a nonchalant, offhanded way, and it just made it so funny. But anyway, back to Kupala's night. This fern flower, it's believed to contain magical powers, and tales say that whoever manages to find and pluck one will find love, knowledge, wealth, and all that good stuff. And maybe even gain magical powers, such as the ability to speak to animals and plants, for example. And as far as Ukrainian folklore goes, tales had also emerged about witches who may try and take advantage of this night as well, and try to find this mysterious fern flower for themselves. And according to the text that Dima translated, once finding this flower, these witches will then cut their palms and stick the flower under their skin in order to gain extraordinary powers. Specifically the ability to turn themselves into other living beings or inanimate objects. And I guess Ukrainian witches really heavily desired this power to be able to shapeshift into other creatures in order to carry out their, whatever demonic witchcraft they're trying to achieve. And so this is also why on Kupala's night, many Ukrainians are reminded to be wary of the possibility of coming across witches on this evening. And so it's important for them to take on the proper steps to protect themselves when going out. And any girl living in the village who didn't participate in the evening's Kupala festivities could also be accused of being a witch herself if she wasn't seen that night, as it could mean that she was maybe seeking the fern flower all alone, perhaps for nefarious witchy reasons. And so yeah, that's the little backstory and inspiration behind this painting. And so I of course had to follow suit with my version of the witch cat, where I have the classic human head with a cat body, just like the source illustration from the original collection of stories. And perhaps I'll show how I use reference photos in a future video. And I think I did briefly clip in the reference images I used for this Ukrainian hat earlier in this video, for example. But of course I used various reference images for the cat body, fern, hands, and flowers. But as far as the face of the witch goes, you've probably noticed it's now quite different looking from my original underdrawing at the beginning of this video, because I'm constantly changing my mind on how I want my faces to look throughout my painting process. I never directly reference just one image for my faces, as it's usually a hodgepodge of several different images where I take little features here and there that I'm aiming for. And so generally my faces are always made up in the end because, first of all, I want all of my faces to be original and not to be this exact replica of someone else's face that's already floating around the internet, as, that's where I source all my references from. And even more importantly, I also don't want to achieve complete realism with my paintings. I like to maintain that awkward handcrafted feeling to them, and I love working them until I reach that desired effect. And as for the fern in her belly, since there's actually no such thing as an actual flowering fern, I still wanted to reference this idea in the painting, but with a little twist to where the fern is instead just burning, and the fire is meant to be a physical representation of this mythical red glowing flower that's always mentioned in the folklore relating to it. And I thought the fire was also a perfect touch because not only does it represent the red glow of the flower that it's said to have in the stories, but the fire in general seems to be a very important element on Kupala's night, as one of the traditions for this evening also typically incorporates a large bonfire where the betrothed couples will try to jump over the bonfire while holding hands. And if they manage to jump over the fire while still hand in hand, it's said to be a good omen for their relationship to come. And speaking of hands, of course my favorite element to this painting would have to be the hands. And of course I used my own hands for the reference. That's why all my hands in my paintings always look the same. But right, so the hands. So to any Adventure Time lovers here, yeah, I absolutely thought of the deer scene the entire time, where he took off his hooves and wiggled his little hands while I painted these hands here. I, of course, wanted to portray that the witch is indeed a human and had transformed into a cat, and so that's why I went for this glove-like appearance where she's taking off her cat paws to reveal her witchy human hands. And I also wanted to inscribe some sort of witchy alchemist type symbol onto her hands, and I kid you not, but I had the perfect symbol to reference for this. So if you actually just Google Ukrainian black magic, you'll probably very easily find these hilarious articles from Russian state media laying claim to supposed findings or evidence that Ukraine has been meddling with black magic to consecrate their evil weapons with supposed blood magic, and including claims of militarized witches existing in the Ukrainian army. And so, you know, of course I couldn't help but to try and replicate this exact supposed Ukrainian black magic symbol that I guess was found on one of the buildings the Russian army came across during their occupation in one of the frontline villages of Luhansk. So it's just another example of typical Russian propaganda that further proves what a clown of a country they are. And I couldn't resist to include a little joke to forever memorialize their stupidity in this painting. So yeah, that's a bit of an inside joke you're now included on. And so there you have it. I hope you enjoyed this little time lapse of my Ukrainian witch cat, and that I didn't bore you too much with my ramblings. She's now off to LA for this beautiful, bizarre Fable and Folklore group show at Copro Gallery, and will be on view for the entire month of May. Thanks again for watching, and I hope to see you guys in the next video. Bye!